Okay.
Thank you, Leanne. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. I'm going to caution my team and you all. I'm going to stand here because we're recording this for YouTube, and there's a microphone back in the back corner. So if you want to say anything nasty, I wouldn't do it right over there because the mic will pick it up. I want to extend a very warm thank you to Kate and your team at BAB for putting this week together. The attendance has been incredible. We've been so pleased with all the turnout and the quality of the input. We had a full slate of interviews, a full schedule while we were here, And the team, I hope you will see, has done a tremendous amount of work in a very short amount of time. And with that, I'm really proud to introduce my teammates on this project. Several of them are, almost all of them are here in the room. Laz Skangus and Heather Fontaine, they're with Arnold and Skangus Architects out of St. Albans. Known Laz for many years, and Heather and I have been working with the team in the other communities in Vermont. I have Nate Scott and Tom McGilloway with Mahan Reichel Associates out of Baltimore, Maryland. Tom's also worked here in Vermont with me in the past, and has worked all over the country, Wyoming and the deep south, post Katrina, and other places. Also pleased to have with me Stacy Payer and Stephanie Francis from South Coast Consulting. Stacy and Stephanie experienced disaster and disaster recovery firsthand, dealing with all the communities along the Mississippi Gulf Coast who experienced not only Hurricane Katrina, but also the BP oil spill following that. So as you might imagine, having a double whammy yourselves here, they definitely know what a double dose of disaster in downtown can do. Last but certainly not least is Randy Wilson. Randy's with Community Design Solutions. He lives just down the road from me in Columbia, South Carolina, hottest place on earth. Except for Brattleboro today. Thanks for bringing the weather with you, Randy. Randy is the state architect for Mississippi and South Carolina, but he works all over the United States with state architects in the Main Street program on doing things. You're going to see some of his skills today as well. One person who's not with us, who's also on our team, is David Boehm. David worked closely and will continue working closely with us on engineering-related issues, particularly things like parking, condition of parking lots, and strategies as we move ahead. There's a lot of detail work that's going on that I'm not going to get into the weeds with you today, because quite frankly, we have a lot more exciting and fun things to talk about, but trust that all the detailed stuff is also going on. I have an excruciatingly detailed memo from David on parking resources and conditions throughout downtown to help advise the town of Brattleboro on how it works through its capital budget to maintain parking and keep that a vibrant part of the overall equation here in downtown. One of the things that just my role in starting out is doing some update to the market analysis. We worked with you all in 2010, so certainly I've been to Brattleboro many times. Back in 2010, in October, we worked with merchants to do customer zip code surveys. This was past peak foliage season. We had 23 participants tally zip codes. They recorded almost 2,000 customer visits in 2010, representing 443 unique American zip codes, 41 states, DC, 4 provinces, 7 foreign countries, 2 secret military. So this is an incredible dynamic, and certainly it is October, and we have to be careful about this. But this puts Brattleboro in the top 10% of the over 200 communities we've ever done a market study in as far as breadth of customers. The only other places that where we've worked that have exceeded you all is Burlington on Church Street Marketplace. They managed to cobble together all 50 states, including North Dakota. And trust me, if you can get a North Dakota, you're in good shape. And then Ocean Springs, Mississippi, along the Gulf Coast of Mississippi, and then a couple communities in western North Carolina, which you know is a major tourism destination adjacent to Asheville. So it really is a testament to the kind of downtown that Brattleboro is, that you had the breadth of visits that you had at this point in 2010. At the end of the day, though, it's really important to see on this slide that even in October, on the heels of foliage season, that 42% of the customers in those businesses in downtown recorded a 05301 zip code. It's imperative and critically important that this downtown continue to serve the local population base, which it indeed does. We acknowledge, and I know you've heard this from folks, I don't go downtown anymore. Well, the data begs to differ with that information. There are locals who go downtown, they comprise the most significant component of that. You see Putney, your neighbor, another 8%, they're here. Vernon, Hinsdale, Wilmington, Marlboro, 2% apiece. Other areas of the customers come from Vermont and the immediate sort of surrounding area. That 7% varies a bit because we've got folks that will come down here from, away. They're doing that trip and they're stopping in and visitors as well. And then you see the rest of Massachusetts, the rest of New Hampshire, Connecticut, other states, other countries. That's representing a little bit over about 1 in every 4 customers is coming from away, from other places. And that's also significantly important because if that were to evaporate, these retailers would evaporate as well. And so this is a dynamic downtown that does not have the luxury of just marketing to a single audience. It must, and so its luxury, in fact, is being able to market to multiple audiences and get the word out to them in an effective way and get that messaging that's going to resonate with a local customer, it's going to resonate with a regional customer, and certainly it's going to resonate with the visitor too. Using that data, we were defining trade areas. What's important, I don't want to get into a lot of detail on this or my team will shoot me, is that when we get into this, we look at visits per 1,000. You see the small communities like Marlboro and West Halifax start to jump up, ahead because they're so tiny, but go hug someone from Marlboro because, they're the ones that come down most often in proportion to their population. These 3 zip codes are your primary trade area. All of these zip codes are your secondary trade area. It's very uncommon for me to see a broad area surrounding a community comprised of secondary trade area, and that is what's happening here in Brattleboro. Bear in mind, too, the Brattleboro zip code itself is quite a large zip code, and so you do get to stretch out into a hinterland that's fairly broad. We saw this happen in Rutland, where it was broad as well. As you might imagine, Rutland's sort of the center of a pretty rural area surrounding it. In St. Albans, you have a lot shorter break because you're so close to Chittenden County. So again, when we compare this to other places, it gives us some interesting perspective. These zip codes then become the foundation of the data research that we do. Your 2010 population, and this was interesting to see, it was projected to basically remain flat or slightly decline. And that's what happened in 2010. We didn't have access to the 2010 data, so it was an estimate at that point. It did exactly what the projection was. It increased by about 0.28%. It was expected to be 16,272 back when we did the study in 2010. The census actually gave you an additional 600 folks in the census reporting. So that's in those zip codes. So bear in mind that this is not, the population of the town. This is the population of those 3 zip codes. However, the population is projected to decline. And I think we've known this. This is not a secret in the community. But the decline is actually expected to accelerate. It's an accelerated decline. And so that is an alarm bell. The asterisk here is put here on purpose because this projection of decline does not know, because projections have no knowledge about VY and the impact of that. And so that projection is actually probably going to be a conservative projection for decline. This is based on aging of population and past trends. And so it may be slightly higher decline than what these numbers are actually reflecting. It's very difficult to say at the end of the day. The median age, again, no surprise. New England is among the oldest. Maine and Vermont are among the oldest states in the Union. I think Maine is the oldest and you're the second oldest. The median age in Vermont is 41. The primary trade area median age is 45. And while I'm in my 40s, and I hate to say this, but 45 is very old for a median age, particularly when you look at the United States when it's 36.8. I was on the phone with my colleague. He was working in a community in the Deep South where the median age was 29 and said, I can't even believe it. They don't have a university or military base here. This place is nuts. And so to have 45 is an important consideration, and it's something that points to some of your strategies as you look at CEVEDS and the regional economic development and attracting young entrepreneurs and folks here back into the communities. It becomes critically important when you look at some of this stuff. Your median household income is $40,793. It's significantly lower than that for Vermont, Vermont is about on par with that of the United States, a little bit higher than the U.S. It's interesting as we look at this median income, as we zoom out from the core of Brattleboro, that income begins to increase, and it increases fairly significantly. And it shouldn't come as a surprise. Also, we looked at wealth numbers, or basically, wealth is a little different than income, and it should come as no surprise to you all that wealth increases significantly as well. So people may not be making a lot of money, but as you move out into the hinterland around, they have a lot of money, tucked away. And so looking at that is an important piece as well. 1 in every 3 households in the 3 zip codes earns under $25,000 a year. That's an important thing to understand here, that we're dealing with a population that has distressed incomes. Now, having said that, there's 40% of the population that earns over $50,000 a year. So you also have a set of households that are of means and have disposable income. So, and then in between that, you take the 33 and 40, and that's the 25 to 50 gap. When we look at this using psychographics, and I always say this does not measure the number of psychos in town. This just sort of takes it and begins to compartmentalize what all the demographic data looks like. This is 2010 data. This is not likely to change a whole lot, but you see things like midlife success. This is a younger population. They tend to do very well. Young achievers, that's about 1 in every 10 here. But then you see striving singles, 25%, 1 in every 4. These are folks that have families, young accumulators, mainstream families, about 10%. Sustaining families, these are folks that are struggling. The thing that, again, this chart reinforces is that red are folks that are older in their characteristics. Typically, their children are now out of the home. Again, with your age being 45, your median age being 45, this wheel in the United States of America is balanced a third, a third, and a third. Your wheel is about 40, almost 50% of that older segment. And you see this particular one, I'm sorry it's not labeled here, these are called affluent empty nesters. That's about 4% of the population. I love these clever names they come up with. Conservative classics are slightly less affluent than the affluent empty nesters. And then you see cautious couples in a very important category, sustaining seniors. These are folks with very limited means. They're on a fixed income, they're aging, and they really do need access to things and services. So this represents an important part of what we're looking at. Some amazing things happened when we updated your trade area statistics between 2010 and 2013. Your sales in this community declined. Now, I've got to put a big sort of caution on this, is that in 2010 we were dealing with dated data, and also we were dealing with the recession, which sent all of the analysts into a lot of roller coaster estimates on things. So take all this data with a grain of salt as we look at it. In fact, season it heavily with salt. But your sales did decline. I wasn't overly surprised by seeing a decline in sales. I was pleased to see that spending rebounded. And so what we're looking at is spending increased while sales declined. What was happening back in 2010 is you were importing about $141 million a year in sales coming in from outside of the 3 zip codes that comprise your primary trade area. Now that importation of dollars, and this is assuming that everyone's spending their money here. We know that's not true. We know some are going to Key, sneak over to Target, and other things like that. They're doing cost of goods sale. But the fact that you closed this gap a little bit from 141 to 47, and actually, and economists always sort of, they're glass half full guys and glass half empty guys. But when I see a closing gap on retail gain, it represents that the market is actually getting, ripe for additional development, and we're actually seeing that sort of happen here. You're actually closing that gap. The locals are spending more. It gives more opportunity. None of this is counting the tourist traffic. None of this is counting that regional visitor. This is all just the locals. So closing that gap is really a good thing because it presents an opportunity for a tightening market and for new things to emerge here. And it's gaining in certain categories, and I'll show you a chart that will blow your mind in a minute. The secondary trade area also saw an increase in sales. Bear in mind, this is very modest sales figures. In the secondary trade area, as you saw, Wilmington, very rural area, but we saw consumers fairly dramatically, again, commensurate with you all, their spending rebounded as well. The secondary trade area is leaking $96 million every year. And so when you gain 47, they leak 96, your overall market dynamic actually completely changed. Between 2010 and 2013, we put those numbers together, you actually become a market that's leaking sales. So you have an opportunity for additional stores to open up here. Whereas when we combined 78 million and 141, you still were gaining sales. And so what this means for you is you've sort of flipped in a very short amount of time, and the door is open now for additional development to happen, additional retail to thrive in the downtown area. But it means that you have to have sort of a concerted effort, an organized effort to do that. And certainly what we have too is an interesting counter trend where we've had space go offline during this time as well. So Brooks House was housing a significant chunk of retail. Flat Street had retail on it, and that retail disappeared between then and now. So it's an optimistic viewpoint that sort of counteracts some of the pessimistic viewpoint on your overall demographic trends. So let's start looking at location. I'm going to spend the next hour going through this chart. No, this is just to show you that I showed my fellow teammates that I work. We actually look at this by category, by hand, ICS codes. Some of the things that are important is that your clusters that were strong in 2010 remain strong now. Even though you've had a decline in restaurants, you still are a dining importer. You're still a dining destination. And quite frankly, if you look at the region, people will come here to eat. Now, a lot of that's quick service dining that's happening out on the interchanges, but some of that's happening downtown as well. You're also a destination for sporting goods. Go give Pal a hug. See you next time. But you're also leaking sales in a lot of categories as well. Things like clothing, which is fairly typical in a market like this. In fact, about the only market, Richard and I were talking about this last night, where we see gain in clothing sales is where you have an outlet mall, and we really don't see that as a viable tool. When you're leaking sales in clothing, it does present an opportunity, particularly for a downtown, to have smaller, additional clothing stores that complement one another. Another category where you perform very strongly is in the home accessories category, which is the home furnishing accessories. And that's a really great category to be strong in. And we've seen a great rebound in that spending in that category, which basically got quashed in the recession. It was very interesting, strong upward trend post 9/11, and then the recession killed it as people were nesting after 9/11, and they were buying all kinds of things for the home. 2008 killed it, but we're seeing a rebound now as people want to sort of freshen up homes. So your spending dynamics really changed. Increased spending from out of declining sales. It flipped your market. I already said that. So your opportunities are strong. All that good news, of course, is tempered by the demographic data. So we have to be careful that we don't get overly enthused about it, because the demographic situation is an important and increasing challenge for this community. Your housing market. We're going to do a lot more work looking at the housing market, but as a consequence of your population decline, one of the things that's going to continue to happen is an increase in vacancy of units here. 6.4% roughly right now. It's expected to be about 9.3% by 2018. A lot of that vacancy, when I tease out that data a little bit further, is happening in rental units. It appears that the home owner occupancy level is going to remain fairly stable, but the rental unit vacancy rate is going to increase over time. And so that is an important consideration. And then the other thing that you all pointed out, and of course me being an outsider, I wanted to research it a little bit further, is the affordability factor here in Brattleboro. The income to mortgage payment ratio in Brattleboro increases the closer you get to downtown. So a median household income compared to the mortgage payment, they're paying 28% of their income for housing in a 5-minute drive time from High and Main Street. When you go up to a 20-minute drive time from High and Main, is 24% of their income. Nationally, that number, pre the bubble, people were spending about 19% of their income on housing. Post-bubble, with low interest rates, people are spending about 12% of their income on housing across the nation. And so Forbes magazine is sort of pointing out, whoa, we're headed for another issue here nationally, because that income to payment ratio is sort of artificially being declined. Here, the red flag is quite different. We have an affordability challenge here, where the income levels compared to the affordability of the homes here just don't line up like they would in other markets. Historically, nationwide, the median home price is usually, the rule of thumb is 2.6 times the median household income. Here in Brattleboro, it's 4.9 times the median income. And so those of you who hypothesize that there's an affordability issue are absolutely correct, and the number confirms that. And I don't need to go into any more detail, other than to say what we need to do as part of your team is look at how do we face this challenge and deal with this challenge. You're already doing proactive things to bridge the affordability gap. Certainly, one of the things I love about working in Vermont is that you follow the community land trust model, and the community land trusts are very innovative in how they deal with housing issues. It's a great tool. It's one that we're trying to sell to the rest of the nation. And so that's a great thing that you're doing. Another thing that we're aware of, Richard was discussing it with me this morning, is you have an incredible program with accessory dwelling units here in Brattleboro. That helps deal not just with affordability issue, but with flexibility of housing and being able to accommodate family members or singles or others that come in. Those are all really good things that are happening. There's got to be the companion, ongoing, proactive strategy to bridge the gap for people of greater needs as well. Because see, what's really happening is that because of that house to income value, that young professional, that entrepreneur, sees that as an obstacle to getting into this market. And so it's not only a challenge for those that have very little needs, it's a challenge for those who have greater needs, because you're not a value proposition alternative for them. You're actually an increase. So they're going to have to sacrifice some of their income in order to live here, in order to afford the housing here. Some of the things that we've seen, there's some incredibly creative models. Purdue, Kentucky did an incredible thing with basically financing for artists that would give down payment assistance to artists, creative financing, and would actually finance the housing for above the market value, with the assumption the artist would be putting studio space in with their living space. The other one is artspace.org, and I encourage you to look at that. They're a national nonprofit that works with communities on developing spaces for artists to live, and they do some really creative work. And then what we're seeing nationwide is community land trusts begin to explore widening and broadening their mission to serve not only those of lesser means, but also those that they're trying to recruit, the entrepreneurs and others, looking at mixed income products as well. We'll be looking more at that as we move ahead. So last boring slide before I turn it over now. I just insulted my entire team. They're not going to let me live it down either. At the end of the day, I want to take a step back. We know there are challenges here, but you've got amazing projects going on. It is incredibly rare for us to go into a community that had a disaster like the Brooks House fire that was able to put together an extraordinarily complicated deal, and I put deal in quotes, but important, complicated financial model to get a $24 million renovation in downtown on a signature corner. That is a testament to this community's resilience and its strength and the vision that you have for this downtown. A community without that kind of commitment could have easily let that building just fall by the wayside. And you saw through the vision and importance of doing that project. So I want that to be sort of a bellwether for this community as you look at additional projects moving ahead to demonstrate that if you can pull that thing off, you can repeat it, and it can happen again and again. What we're seeing too, and I'm really excited about it, is the regional efforts that are going on as far as SEVEDS and the SEDS efforts, coupled with local efforts as far as local sustainability and looking at creative ways to support the local economy. They're really combining together to bring ideas on how to reshape this economy and look at it as you move ahead into the post Vermont Yankee economy as well. And that's going to be critically important that you bring your best thinking together on this. Downtown is going to play a pivotal role in this undertaking because what we're seeing nationwide, and I've experienced it, throughout the Southeast, as we watch textile mill after textile mill vacate our downtowns and just suck jobs out of the core of downtowns. We're seeing these downtowns reemerge as the centers of creative activity and the centers of entrepreneurship and the centers of small business and the centers of activity. You've already got this in spades in this downtown. How do you continue to build? Main Street is working, the street itself is working. How do we extend the success of Main Street downtown onto adjacent streets? And my teammates will be talking about that. And then part of what we really want to focus on too is that, and this is imperative as we deal with disaster recovery, is how do we deal with simple things that can be done day to day. It was awesome, like yesterday evening, to see Dick DeGray and his wife out pulling up plants out of the pots to get ready to replant them with mums for the fall season. These are important projects. When I see the wall with the chalk, with people writing what their hopes and dreams are on it, these are important projects. And so having some of the simple things that you're doing that also build the confidence to do the more complex things is really important. So with that, I'm going to talk a little bit more. I'd love for Tom to join me here to talk a little bit about parking and some of the overall physical planning issues. So, all right. So we're going to talk about some of the physical planning and design aspects of this effort, and looking in context, as Tripp said, with the big picture, some of the longer-term items. I'll start with that and giving some context, and then zooming back into some of the short-term things that we can focus on. We'll first start talking a little bit about some of the parking resources and issues. We're going to be delving into that a little more and setting up a framework for some more detailed parking studies that can occur as part of your town master plan. We're going to talk a little bit about the regional trail connections. There's studies over the past 10 years deal with that effort, and then a framework plan for downtown, and then ending with some general enhancements. Currently in downtown, you have 924 public parking spaces. Of those are about 20%, 1 in every 5 are on-street metered spaces. About 80% of those are in public lots. We've heard a lot of discussion about how all that's managed and how that's dealt with. A lot of the lots, quite frankly, are not fully utilized, and several lots are very competitively utilized. So you can have lots like the Harmony lot, which is quite used. Then you have the parking deck, which has a lot of vacancy in it. So how do we look at managing some of these parking resources so that you get the most out of your parking issue? There's also significant additional private parking resources, and we'll be working with the town to begin to understand that as well. Because as you might look at 924, that number, while albeit high, certainly is not enough to sustain the space that you have. So we factor in things like the co-op, the latches, all the other parking resources that are private, the banks and so forth. Those significantly increase the number of parking resources you have. We've conducted, I'll say David has conducted, through the help of the town, a detailed condition analysis of all your parking, including a rating system from Excellent Report on the condition of each of your lots and decks, along with pointers on how to rank a capital improvement plan to maintain and keep those done. And we'll be turning that detailed report over to the town to look at. I'm not going to get into the details of some of the things David talked about, like the giant crack on Lower Green Street and some other things that are going on. But it's a detailed report. And so we'll be providing that later on. And certainly the signs that you've installed are an improvement and direction to visitor parking lots, but that needs to continue to be driven home and cultivated. Tom will talk about that in the
Yeah. And as we work in Main Street communities all over and want to just hit up some best practices that might be considered over time here in Brattleboro. This is from a conference topic with the recent Main Street conference from a presentation from Nelson Nygaard. And a couple of things that they really hit me that resonated is that really parking in the downtown is not about cars, it's about people, managing people and people's experience. Parking is a convenience to give people access to the retail and the experience in the downtown. One of the on-street parking is the most important parking, and innovative town is trying to maintain 80 to 90% availability of on-street parking at all times, occupancy, so that there's always maybe 1 or 2 spaces per block that is available, and that there's any convenience in there. I think the pricing strategies help help you maintain that balance. And then really looking for the overall philosophy of park ones for visitors and pedestrians. There's a real opportunity here, capitalizing on the parking deck more in some of the remote lots that we have, and creating a downtown experience that's attractive to people who don't mind parking once and being pedestrians the rest of the time. As I said, on-street parking is the most valuable, and a lot of communities are managing that by parking, doing a variable pricing, charging higher prices for the prime spot. And so if you're a cheap riser and maybe if you kind of want to pay a lot of parking, I'll park in a remote lot that might be cheaper, and I like the experience of it. But there's some people that's very important to park out front, and that's the reason why they might be willing to pay a higher price for some of that parking. So it comes up, and there's a balance into that pricing strategy that helps determine how many spaces are occupied and how many are available in each block face. And that parking strategy for the pricing is used to force turnover of parking. A lot of communities are getting away from time limits. They're letting the customer determine how long they're going to stay. And by pricing some of the most valuable parking spaces, a higher price point will keep them from parking there all day long.
And that's one of the challenges you see here possibly is you see price parity between on-street spaces and lot spaces. Those pricing are roughly equal to one another. The inclination is I'm going to get that prime space on the street as much as I can, whereas if there's not price parity, it's cheaper to park in a lot than it is to park on the street. You're getting that consumer demand.
We heard a lot about the no parking meters not in effect on Sunday. We've heard people say they like that. We've heard people say they didn't. Generally, as soon as you take the meters off and or if you end them at 6 p.m. or take them off on Sunday, then that encourages potential customers of your downtown businesses to take some of those prime spaces and parking there all day long. So these are just some things long term to be considering. We'll fold this in as a class. And so parking is really about convenience. Parking further away is more acceptable to people if the experience of getting from that parking resource is clear, understandable, and convenient. You're walking along black walls and unshaded streets where there's no signs telling you where to go. You're going to feel like you're parking a lot further away than you really are, versus if you're walking across active storefronts. There's a lot going on, things to see. That distance is shorter. So, what's really what hurt businesses is a poor downtown environment, not so much, whether or not there's a lot of parking right in front of that business. Brattleboro has done a And then even just some of the, more subtle things, we're walking along and you obviously a little sidewalks where it has some public art incorporated into it, not just the etching or some other inserts. This is real surprising when you find out who's flying around Brattleboro. So, I mean, I could spend an hour on all the great assets we have here. Those are some things that really immediately resonated. We're going to take a big picture look and before we talk about the detail downtown, look at some more regional connections. There's some great trail access along the West River, and then also to the south, there's a ranch trail in New Hampshire. In 2002, there was a report done for feasibility study for that missing link, the Brattleboro link with the Connecticut River Rail Trails program. And if we look at the region, downtown Brattleboro right here, the Fordville Branch Trail, the New Hampshire side ends about here, the West River Trail ends about here. The feasibility study looked at extending the trail on a shorter term opportunity to extend it up to the south of downtown to the depot area. There's the ability with, as the feasibility of looking at the bridge, between the pedestrian bridge and the new bridge being built in its place. There's a real opportunity to create a new trail system there. So even before it connects to the broader system, there's the ability to really create all loop around this wonderful resource of the river. Lastly, connecting to the north up to the West River Trail. And the feasibility study really got into several different alternatives, the pros and cons. The most feasible seemed to be running it along the west side of the railroad. We're not able to, in our 2 days here, evaluate what's the best route to go. The big picture is that this is a really important thing to occur and continue work to make happen. And it's really going to have, as we look at the downtown area, start to impact what happens downtown and some more micro connections in the downtown area. And this is just further to the north of the feasibility study looking at 2 different alternative trails. So as we look at our downtown area, the core area, just to give you some orientation, obviously Bridge Street, the bridge, so in here, all of the orange colored buildings are existing buildings. Where you see red are where we talked about potential infill development or development projects that are either in the exploratory phase or early feasibility phase. The river garden is up here, Main Street, Elliott Street, Flat Street in this direction, public parking resources, the parking garage, Preston Street lot, Pine Street lot, Spring and Hybrid lot over here. Parking in the buildings right here and both that So I'm going to talk a couple things that I'm going to talk and orient right here. And this is what co-op and this is the Redstone book. I'm going to talk a little bit about we met with some of the members of the youth here, which is currently located in this building. They're exploring some expansion options on the site. We understand that there's potential for the community center to utilize portions of the existing church building and then some expansion next to that is being explored. And then we talked with some property owners about potential expansion here. concept, there's many different ways this can be developed, and this is just a quick look at some potential. One of the thoughts we have might be important capability on the corner of the street, Flat Street and Elm Street, perhaps preserve some of the parking that's in this area and replace the rest of it in this area, and then create a network trail system that links into more of an outdoor open area and some sustainable landscape component like that a little bit. And we think there's a real opportunity to explore feasibility of pedestrian areas along parking lots and perhaps a trail along the western this side. And one of the reasons we look at that is the way Flat Street banks are. We're working along Flat Street, we really don't see what's around this corner, the alignment of the road. And it might be a little potential to really create a stronger connection here, especially as you start to activate this waterfront edge more. Similarly, if the Brattleboro Music Center locates here with this portion of the existing building and some expansion space, also we really start to get more cultural activity in this area to really expand that waterfront. It will be important if you look at something like this to really all the partners need to be involved. Co-op, the institutions over here to sort of understand parking arrangements. There's a concern obviously that people would park here and use these facilities and not the co-op. So there have to be some understanding and agreements agreed upon and some enforcement of that. But it's an idea we think is worth exploring. We could really set up an exciting corridor along the west, and even as some of these facilities develop, there's outdoor decks or outdoor areas that overlook street. And this is some existing youth theater area and this facility where incorporating some of the sustainable landscape practices that we recommend continuing. But again, they're right on the whetstone. There's a couple of pruning shears could open up some views at a very easy improvement that you can start to gauge that wonderful resource that's very hidden. And if you look over that, you climb through those overgrowth and you see this wonderful resource that you can gauge. Look into the core of downtown. This is the Harmony Lot. This is the Dork Hotel. This is the plan that we got from Stevens Associates that was being looked at. Their plan is being the same part. This goes right through here. So the paving will be treated differently. There'll be some outdoor amenity space associated with the development and covered parking space. And then we're recommending from the Conway School did a study of the parking lot, and one of the recommendations is creating a peer organization through there, perhaps exploring permanent paving in some of the parking stalls. We think it's really important to preserve the existing trees in there and then supplement the trees and then forward help with additional trees, because that really is a wonderful space back there. If you look at some of the photographs, really have a wonderful sense of space. Another great place for some festivals or events to occur. Juxtaposition of architectural forms are really quite unusual. And this is an example. This is in my neighborhood in Baltimore, a food truck rally, which is this is in the SPCA parking lot. But a place like this would be a wonderful event or something like this. Again, a responsible event. It doesn't have to be converted into a permanent open space. But if we go back, another quick fix that could be done. This is up on the street above that lot. Again, just opening up some, cleaning up some of this vegetation, taking advantage of the views there. It also opens up, puts eyes in that space, and makes it a little safer, keeps some of the activities you don't want to happen, not happening, have more visibility and eyes. It also we can take advantage of some of the views that spire and the architecture behind the existing. the other, we met with some property owners interested in looking, or some businesses interested in looking at building next to the parking deck. We've heard some plans for some potential infill development building. We think this is a really a tremendous opportunity, activating, adding more positive activity to Flat Street. These buildings can develop around the courtyard. They looked at some more detailed studies, but we wanted to look at it from a more bigger picture perspective, some opportunities for public board to tie that into Elliott Street as well as Flat Street, and then surround and create dynamic courtyard space. This is a mill reuse in Baltimore where creative business an industrial courtyard gathering spaces in amongst those buildings with some of the same characteristics that are currently playing off on that industrial warehouse, heating, string lights, umbrella table. Again, not a lot of investment in the space, like this, very attractive, and then you get into some of the details, some of the industrial elements incorporated into the design. Those are a lot of those are some long-term projects that are really building on some efforts that are already underway here. But one talk about a couple general enhancements, things that are fairly easy to do. All summer you're already doing this stuff, we think there's an opportunity to do that. One, the maintenance and beautification. We early yesterday morning walking up the street and stuff, this gentleman through Sam's house sweeping the sidewalk. Can't stress enough how important this is. And every property owner, every business owner really has a role to play in keeping the sidewalks clean. The town can't do it on its own. One organization can't do it on everyone's responsibility. We heard several people talk about how dirty the streets, the sidewalks are in town. I've been very impressed with how clean everything is, and it's the efforts like this that are really, you're doing a phenomenal job. Dick was out busy last night, changing over the baskets again. Volunteer effort. You're so fortunate to have individuals like these that are really taking upon themselves to do work like this, and I'm sure really use additional support. And this is what these little details make the community. When we talk about the convenience of walking parks, or walking across well-maintained sidewalks, flower pots, and places that people obviously care, it makes a big difference to the business downtown. And one of the things that I just love at this Humble Cafe is just a wonderful use. Again, not a lot of investment in this, but these little pop-up uses, these are happening all over the country, pop-up uses that start to activate and turn maybe an underutilized space into a very important space. It helps incubate businesses, and then starts to get people thinking about the district differently than they currently may, and then sets the stage for future more intensity about investment in those areas in the future. Another concept we see happening a lot is the idea of a pop-up cafe or parklet. We heard a number of people talk about a desire to remove on-street parking along the boardwalk of Main Street. We kind of all shuddered a little when we heard that. We understand the desire to expand the sidewalks and more outdoor dining space and pedestrian area, but those on-street parking spaces are so critical to businesses, the convenience of parking, and that customer experience. But one thing that you can do is look at on a seasonal basis, taking maybe a couple parking spaces that the business or the downtown district that apply for a permit and then convert it into an outdoor space on a temporary basis. And this is a bump out showing where it might be a lot of times either built with just wood decking, and it's done for 3 months out of the year, and then allows tables for, in this case, because you have a lot of truck traffic along Main Street, we would recommend that the tables in the curb up against the building and pedestrians can move out along the edge. That's one of the reasons we would not recommend removing the parking along the street because of the amount of traffic along the not a very desirable space. And the park car is actually at a good transition buffer between the pedestrian and the visitor. And these are some, this was from a parking day event. This is in our neighborhood nation, nice neighborhood That might be something that Brattleboro experiments with, to see if maybe people warm up to the idea and they might turn it into some more extensive. It's an easy way without making a huge capital investment. The other thing that really struck me was opening up views. I talked earlier about the edge, River Valley, the shear, the green straw house. There's all kinds of areas throughout the downtown where you can really take advantage of either use of the water or from higher grounds to the downtown area. I did my morning jog the other day up Mass Street, up on Kellogg. There's this great little series of benches along here with potentially great views of the downtown, with maybe a couple limbing up of some trees or selective removal of something that you could open up some views and make that connection to downtown. This wonderful little plaza with a flagpole right here has great views of the downtown. This is the area showing about Army Walk for a little bit here. You can open that up. River Garden, again, maybe living up a tree that's there. We open up views. This public parking lot right here, there's tremendous views of the city. There's right now a little wooden shed there that blocks that view. You're looking down the length of the river, and it really, just for the people using that block, they can engage with it. And then on the High Grove block, looking at the downtown and the church spire already is a great view. So, and even a little along the west end, just some areas where you can open up this great architectural interface with water, with clearing out some of that. Yeah, and then from Septed to crime prevention to environmental design, there's practices of just putting more eyes in the space, heat from electric. This is a great area where you can capitalize on some distant views and make things this is where you have the most tremendous view that connection you ever. I almost fell over the hill standing on the guardrail to take this view, and it's begging for an open view. Now, I love trees, but there are opportunities to do some selective to really engage people with that resource. Already you have some great views, just a little bit of elevation change from the high road to the spires and architecture downtown. And then even again, here, the fence along the west side, walking up on the train station and the waterfront, there's a lot more opportunity to engage this view and encourage people to hang over that rail. This is the nearby Shelburne Falls, Massachusetts, along the waterfront, where you really took advantage here of engaging with the water and the rock quarry. You're already doing that with the railing along the bridge. There's just maybe an opportunity to extend that down to the riverfront. And then the town common, which is a wonderful space. Again, I was jogging, and then I got a few little glimpses of some water through those trees, and then after going through and looking through the West River, just an amazing view of the West River. Really don't feel connected to that from the town common. So every opportunity you can engage with the water and the river is great, and it's not expensive to do that. And then, a similar situation is now Smith College in Northampton, how the impact that makes when you engage with that water resource. The other easy thing to do is lighting. These are just some examples we found, and they're not exactly the examples used here, but the underpasses, we have the parking garage, Yeah, but you can pick something that would satisfy your particular niche. The fact is, as the day moves on and darkness sets in, it affords these really great opportunities to highlight and activate the animators into the wall. Like Tom just alluded to, you can both have lights on the building that's behind us that would illuminate the building in the background, but also some downlight that sort of highlight the activity from forecasting the rocks to both the noise where Stephanie, she's going to do sound effects for the slide. But as well as the visual, I mean, there's just something mesmerizing just watching the water passing over the rocks. The thing about this particular perspective, in addition to the one that Tom showed, which was lower down this roadway, is here, both as a pedestrian and an automobile in the far right lane, you can actually see some of this views activated. And so as it gets even darker, the drama increases even more. And again, the whole goal here is this is a tremendous asset for what we have. These are just opportunities to animate and activate further. This obviously is just considering a single color light. You can sort of change them all to be different color light. You can alternate colors. That's up to you. But the whole goal of all of this is simply to activate and animate very significant assets.
And lighting is a relatively inexpensive thing to do, and as you talk safety and illumination, there can be some funding available for that. Another great opportunity is just the wall back by the parking deck. So for a lot of us just hanging out and loitering in this corner. It's pretty dark here at night, but look at the wealth of stonework in that wall. I mean, it's just quite beautiful, and I think of it as a right image for that would be in the sense that was downlit and really play that off as a real aspect that would be excellent. Some other things is from general practice as we look at all the landscape we showed some of the courtyards around the youth theater and the music center. There's something along the west end where we're incorporating edible landscapes into that. This is one that our office participated at home, and it's a really great way to involve the community, engage the community, engage youth in activities, whether it's arts and painting, making walls, or actually planting gardens and participating, growing the garden. This is the permaculture garden down at Amherst. There's really a lot of attention to the whole edible landscape, and these don't have to be done in the format of a community garden. It could be an artistic ornamental landscape that happens in the as well. Looking at green roof, incorporating that into some of the developments, especially along the west coast. And then bioretention rain gardens. This is a Penn State campus. We're already doing it in the co-op. It really, and this also, what it does is puts it out front and center
also met with property owners, and we each came up, they had their own mission. This is a nice little building. No one came to us, can I put a second floor on it? Well, I had views of the river, and a couple of apartments. It looks almost like a two-story building. There's a two-story building next to it. It's actually one story. So they asked us, here's our building. It's masonry granite walls, has steel columns, and this building. This parapets are 7 foot tall to make it look like a two-story building, so it fits in on Main Street. On the roof, you can't even see the railings also. So they already have some structure that can take advantage of. The cursor to do their structure. They'll probably fit 230 by 65 apartments and have views of the back. It's about 1,800, 2,000 square feet, which is a good size. They may need to reinforce their columns and their roof framing, but the bulbs are there. They can use them. We have to take some of the parapets, sections of it out to place windows and stuff. But the view is fantastic. Take advantage of it. You have this great asset here. Like Tom said. I can't see. Another owner came to us and said, I have this temporary structure in the back. I like this man, I reach out, I like to clean it up. So we did a real quick sketch, but just to give an idea of what might happen when you clean it up, this becomes a one-story structure here, an outside living space. Just gives an idea of what the potential is. Project that I haven't worked on, and it's right next to it, it's where I live. And the owner liked to get rid of the awnings, and dress up the building, how do we make it look a little better? And these are simple details, they're not expensive, they do cost money. So about the awnings, we want to maybe do a pretty quick cost, for the signs, we do tile underneath, and we put their address, but simple cleanup, real fresh paint, just cleans it up, makes it look fresh.
Paul, Levitt from New York came down, he's the owner of this building, he mentioned City College, and one of my favorite things about being sort of a first base based architect is pretending you're Sherlock Holmes, trying to unravel the story. Because if you're like me, you come and you look and you realize, all right, I'm pretty darn sure the building needs to stop. Okay? So what's going on up here? And sure enough, my hunch was partially correct, because it indeed was a later addition, but not that much later addition, which surprised me. Those of you who don't know, this building was constructed out of this addition was built in the late 2000s. I was taking it way to the front of the thing. But the mystery for me was, how did this, especially you consider the space between the front and because the frame colors are almost the same sort of total value as the brick itself. And so by using sort of the rust red, you really don't get a bang for the buck. So if we take all of the structural elements, the cast iron, ties, you know, a broad brown, and we convert all the square flood plate to the lean, just the top of the color of the red. Then we sort of draw out all of the architectural details that were there, that were just sort of ideas. I also had the privilege to meet with the folks who will be occupying the river garden. And just a couple of real quick things. We didn't really compare a rendering on the inside of the front, but we gave some short and long-term recommendations. One is, if you've been in there for a meeting, it's really noisy. Both from the sound coming in from the outside as well as just reverberant noises on the inside. And so by hanging banners, you can accomplish a lot of things. Already, branding, you can introduce, in their case, sort of the educational mission, featuring agriculture and agriculture, but it also has acoustic value to attenuate sound bounces off the walls. You can also string them up to the rafters, kind of this configuration. It also gains a lot of heat from the skylight. There's a product called Calwan. We're only talking about the gable portions, but by using a product like that, you can reduce almost 80% of the solar heat gain transmission that you always want. And then you simply, have a few of the clear story windows that are operable, and you can also allow some on the outside, in the short term, as Nate showed in this model that Tom talked about, in this foreground, you can just introduce a bunch of cabinet tables with bright color awnings. It sort of diminishes the whole, kind of softens the look of it being kind of wall, for lack of a better word. And then if we can introduce, we already have some planners out there, but if we think about more planners and sort of low, medium, and high, again, anything we can do to sort of break up the sound that's coming in from the road next door, we can concentrate. Literally, long-term things, low priority, that if you ever really wanted to, something that really helped, because for some reason, this game will actually protrude out from the face of the building, unlike any of the other ones. You can move just that one section, just back to the door where it's flush. You could also move some pictures from this. On the outside itself, this was the courtyard that Tom and Nate illustrated. When we talked about this one might step down to the lower deck as well as extended. And so this is just an illustration, again, going back to this whole notion of, we don't want to remove trees, but we just want to limb up and create some views and frame some views to the river.
Wrap on over. I'm going to wrap up because we talked about a lot of ideas. We have 2 upcoming trips. We begin to focus on some of the important things like organization and funding. Stephanie, who's on our team, will be dealing with a lot of the funding issues. But there's a lot of opportunities out there. You're already taking advantage of them. One of the neat things about the Brooks House is that you've basically cobbled together just about every possible financing technique known to man in order to get that project done. Once you've done the most complex project, you can replicate that again and again with more simple projects, whether you use state historic federal tax credits, there's facade tax credits available to the state, new markets tax credits, all of downtown Brattleboro qualify for new markets tax credits, the investment tax credits, renewable energy program. I mean, there's the elevator program, you name it, these things are out here. That's part of what we'll be looking at as we look ahead on steps and implementation. We'll be back here in October, and then we'll be back here in December working with you all on some of those details. In addition, you're at an incredible transition point in the community. Building a Metro Brattleboro is looking at hiring a staff person. You've got new staff coming on board in all the different leadership organizations, and so that's going to really present an interesting dynamic as new board members come on board, the new coordinator comes on board, the sale of the River Garden to a partner organization, which was a victory for the community. Everyone sort of wins. And at the end of the day, it's merchants is where all the great downtown organizations and programs begin. So sort of getting back to the core of that and then building back that strength, building your events that are already strong, and then facilitating those partners to help flesh parking issues that we talked about earlier. So I'll wrap up with what's next. Pretty much already just said. A couple some follow-up visits. Certainly we'll be doing our best to make this presentation available within the next day or so, so that you can watch it on YouTube. With that, I know we've gone over, but I would be happy to have the lights come up. We want to thank you for all your input that you gave us, and we're eager to hear your thoughts or comments as a